Hello, and welcome to Boring Physicist, where the mysteries of existence unfold like gentle waves against the shore of consciousness. And I'm really glad you found your way here tonight, to this quiet corner of the universe, where we can explore the deepest questions together in the soft embrace of twilight thoughts. I'm so glad you're here, settling into this moment of peaceful inquiry, letting the day's urgent concerns dissolve like sugar in warm tea. Because tonight we're going to embark on a journey that begins at the very edge of sleep, where the boundaries between what we call real and what we call imagined become as fluid as moonlight dancing on water. There's something profoundly beautiful about the way your mind begins to drift as darkness settles around you, how thoughts become less like sharp-edged facts and more like watercolors bleeding gently into one another, creating new patterns, new possibilities that exist nowhere else but in that liminal space between waking and sleeping. Tonight, I want to share with you a question that has haunted physicists and philosophers alike. A question that whispers itself into existence every single night when billions of people around the world close their eyes and surrender to the mysterious theater of dreams. And that question is this: what if our dreams aren't merely the random firing of neurons processing the day's memories, but something far more extraordinary? Something that challenges our most fundamental understanding of time, reality, and the very nature of existence itself? Consider for a moment the peculiar nature of dreaming, how in the space of what seems like hours, you can live entire lifetimes, experience conversations with people you've never met, visit places that feel more real than the room where your body lies, sleeping, and most mysteriously of all, how you can sometimes encounter versions of yourself that are subtly or dramatically different from who you are in this timeline, this particular thread of reality that you call your waking life. What if these aren't fantasies conjured by your sleeping brain, but actual glimpses into parallel timelines, alternate versions of reality where different choices were made, different paths were taken, different possibilities bloomed into existence like flowers in an infinite garden of what might be? The idea might sound like science fiction, but when we peer into the deepest mysteries of quantum mechanics, we discover that reality itself is far stranger than any fiction we could imagine, filled with phenomena that would seem impossible if we encountered them in dreams, yet they form the very foundation of the universe we inhabit. Quantum physicists have long grappled with the many worlds interpretation, a theory suggesting that every quantum measurement, every moment of uncertainty, creates a branching of reality into multiple parallel universes, each one as real and valid as the one you're experiencing right now, each one containing versions of you making different choices, living different lives, dreaming different dreams. Oh, and if you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. Super curious where you're all listening from. So, drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Alright, let's head back to this fascinating possibility that every night, as you surrender to sleep, your consciousness somehow attunes itself to frequencies that exist beyond the narrow bandwidth of waking awareness. Imagine consciousness not as a spotlight illuminating only the immediate present, but as a radio capable of tuning into different stations, different realities broadcasting on frequencies that are normally drowned out by the static of daily life, but which become audible in the profound quiet of sleep, when the analytical mind releases its grip and allows something deeper, something more mysterious to emerge. In dreams, you might encounter the you who became a painter instead of an accountant, the you who moved to a different city, married a different person, chose a path that diverged from this timeline at some crucial moment of decision, and what feels like imagination might actually be a form of interdimensional tourism, a nightly journey across the vast landscape of possibility. The mathematics of infinite timelines suggests that somewhere in the multiverse, every possible version of your life is playing out simultaneously, each one as vivid and real as this moment you're experiencing now, each one containing a consciousness that believes itself to be the real you, just as you believe yourself to be real in this timeline. These parallel selves might be lying in beds similar to yours, listening to voices that whisper different stories, or they might inhabit worlds where the very laws of physics operate differently, where gravity flows upward, where time moves backward, where dreams themselves are the primary reality, and what we call waking life is merely the fleeting fantasy. When you dream of flying, Perhaps you're experiencing a timeline where human beings evolved differently, where the ability to soar through the air is as natural as walking, and the exhilaration you feel isn't imaginary, but the genuine sensation of movement through three-dimensional space in a world where such movement is possible. When you dream of conversations with deceased loved ones, maybe you're touching a timeline where death works differently, where consciousness persists in forms that can still communicate with the living. And the comfort you feel upon waking isn't the result of wishful thinking, but the afterglow of an actual reunion across the boundaries of existence. The ancient mystics spoke of dreams as journeys of the soul, and perhaps they understood something that modern science is only beginning to rediscover, that consciousness is not confined to the physical brain, but is something far more expansive, capable of transcending the apparent limitations of space and time, capable of experiencing realities that exist beyond the narrow slice of possibility that we call the present moment. Every night, as your body becomes still and your breathing deepens, your awareness might be preparing for a voyage across the ocean of infinite potential, navigating by stars that exist only in other dimensions, following currents of possibility that flow between worlds. The beautiful thing about this perspective is how it transforms the very nature of sleep from a passive state of unconsciousness into an active exploration of the deepest mysteries of existence, how it suggests that every dream is a gift, a glimpse into the magnificent tapestry of what is, what was, and what could be, woven together in patterns too complex for the waking mind to fully comprehend, but which the dreaming consciousness navigates with the wisdom of 1,000 lifetimes lived simultaneously across the spectrum of possibility. The quantum field that underlies all reality vibrates with infinite possibilities, each vibration representing a different timeline, a different way that the story of existence could unfold, and perhaps when we sleep, our consciousness becomes sensitive to these subtle vibrations, like a delicate instrument capable of detecting frequencies that are normally masked by the overwhelming noise of daily existence. Scientists have discovered that at the quantum level, particles exist in states of superposition, simultaneously occupying multiple positions until observation collapses them into a single reality. And what if consciousness works similarly, existing in multiple timelines simultaneously until the act of waking forces us to collapse into just one thread of experience? Think about the dreams where you possess knowledge you don't have in waking life, where you speak languages you've never learned, where you navigate cities that don't exist on any map but feel as familiar as your childhood home, where you have skills and abilities that your waking self has never developed. And consider the possibility that these aren't random neural connections, but actual memories from parallel versions of yourself, bleeding through the permeable boundaries between realities like light filtering through a prism, revealing the hidden spectrum of who you are across the infinite dimensions of possibility. The nature of time itself becomes more mysterious when we consider that in dreams, past, present, and future often merge into something that transcends linear sequence, where you might find yourself as a child in your current home or as an adult in a place from your youth, where conversations span decades in minutes, where cause and effect operate according to different laws entirely. Perhaps this temporal fluidity isn't a malfunction of the dreaming brain, but a glimpse into the true nature of time, which quantum physics suggests might not be the straight line we experience in waking consciousness, but something more like an ocean, where all moments exist simultaneously, and consciousness can navigate between them when freed from the constraints of physical embodiment. The most profound dreams are often those where we encounter profound wisdom that feels both entirely new and deeply familiar, where insights arise that seem to come from a source beyond our individual experience. And what if these moments of clarity are instances where we connect with the collective knowledge of all our parallel selves, accessing the accumulated wisdom of countless lifetimes lived across the spectrum of possibility, drawing from wells of experience that exist in timelines where we made different choices, learned different lessons, walked different paths toward understanding. Some of the greatest discoveries in human history have come through dreams, where minds touched something beyond the ordinary boundaries of knowledge and brought back gifts that transformed our understanding of reality. And perhaps these moments of inspiration aren't random sparks of creativity, but glimpses into timelines where these discoveries were made long ago, where the knowledge already exists, in forms that consciousness can access when it expands beyond the limitations of individual experience into the vast network of interconnected awareness that spans all realities. As your breathing deepens and your awareness begins to soften around the edges, notice how the boundary between inner and outer experience becomes less defined, how the room around you might begin to feel like just one possibility among many, how your sense of self might expand beyond the confines of your individual identity into something larger, something that encompasses all the versions of you that exist across the infinite landscape of what might be, and allow yourself to surrender to this expansion, to this opening into mystery, knowing that you're about to embark on a journey that has been taking place every night of your life, but which you're now beginning to understand in an entirely new way. The transition into sleep becomes a sacred threshold when viewed through this lens, not a loss of consciousness, but an expansion of it, not a retreat from reality, but an exploration of realities beyond counting, where every dream becomes a expedition into the unknown territories of existence, and every morning brings you back with treasures that your waking mind might not fully remember, but which your deeper self carries forward, enriching your understanding of what it means to be conscious, to be alive, to be part of this magnificent cosmic story that unfolds simultaneously across infinite dimensions of possibility. As you prepare to journey into sleep tonight, I invite you to hold this question gently in your awareness, not as something that requires an answer, but as a doorway to wonder, a possibility that makes the simple act of closing your eyes into the beginning of the most extraordinary adventure imaginable, where every dream becomes a window into worlds beyond counting, and every morning brings the memory of places you've visited and lives you've lived in the infinite library of what might be. Let your eyes grow heavy now, feeling the weight of this beautiful mystery settling around you like a soft blanket woven from starlight and possibility, knowing that tonight, as every night, you stand at the threshold of infinite worlds, ready to step through the doorway of dreams into the vast expanse of everything that was, is, and could ever be, carrying with you this gentle question about the true nature of the journeys that await you in the realm beyond waking consciousness. The moment your consciousness begins to drift away from the familiar shores of waking awareness, you enter a realm where the very architecture of reality becomes fluid, where the solid walls of what we call possible begin to dissolve like mist in the morning sun, revealing landscapes that exist beyond the boundaries of ordinary experience. And tonight we venture deeper into this mystery, exploring how the structure of dreams themselves might mirror the infinite branching pathways of parallel universes, each choice point in your dream becoming a window into a different timeline where different versions of yourself are living entirely different lives. Consider the peculiar geometry of dream space, how rooms can be simultaneously familiar and impossible, how you can walk through a door in your childhood home and emerge into a place you've never been but somehow know intimately, how staircases can lead both up and down at the same time, how distances contract and expand according to emotional rather than physical laws, and perhaps these spatial impossibilities aren't the random creations of a sleeping brain, but accurate representations of how space actually works in dimensions beyond our three-dimensional experience, where the topology of reality bends according to the gravitational pull of consciousness itself. In the waking world, we move through space, in linear fashion, constrained by the laws of physics that govern material existence, but in dreams, you might find yourself traveling vast distances in a single step, or spending hours walking down a hallway that never seems to end. And what if these dream experiences are glimpses into the true nature of space-time, where consciousness can navigate reality according to quantum principles that allow for instant transportation between distant points, where the observer effect means that your very attention shapes the landscape through which you move, creating pathways between worlds that exist only as long as your awareness holds them in being. The people who populate your dreams often behave in ways that feel simultaneously predictable and surprising, speaking words that you could never have imagined but which feel perfectly appropriate to the dream narrative, possessing knowledge and personalities that seem to arise from sources beyond your individual memory. And perhaps these dream characters aren't simply projections of your unconscious mind, but actual encounters with consciousness from parallel timelines, where different versions of the people you know are living out different possibilities, and your dreaming awareness is sensitive enough to pick up on these alternate personalities like a radio tuning into signals from distant stations. Think about the dreams where you meet someone you've never encountered in waking life, yet you feel an immediate sense of deep connection, as if you've known them forever, where conversations unfold with a natural intimacy that would normally take years to develop, where you share experiences and memories that belong to no timeline you consciously remember, and consider the possibility that these are actual meetings with souls you know from other realities, other lifetimes, other versions of existence where your paths crossed in ways that left deep impressions in the quantum field that connects all consciousness across all possible worlds. The emotional quality of dreams often carries a weight and significance that seems disproportionate to the actual events of the dream narrative, where simple actions can be infused with profound meaning, where symbolic encounters can leave you feeling changed at the deepest level, where the resolution of a dream conflict can bring healing to wounds you didn't even know you carried. And perhaps this emotional resonance occurs because dreams connect you not just to alternate versions of yourself, but to the archetypal patterns that underlie all possible experiences, the fundamental emotional structures that repeat across infinite timelines, like melodies that can be played in countless variations but retain their essential character. The phenomenon of lucid dreaming, where you become aware that you're dreaming while still remaining in the dream state, offers particularly intriguing insights into the nature of consciousness and its relationship to reality, because in these moments of expanded awareness, you often discover that you can influence the dream environment through the power of intention alone, reshaping landscapes, altering narratives, even changing the fundamental laws that govern the dream reality. And what if this ability to consciously participate in dream creation is actually a glimpse into the true power of consciousness to shape reality itself, suggesting that in timelines where awareness is more developed, beings might possess the ability to influence physical reality through focused intention in ways that we can only experience now in the realm of dreams. When you become lucid in a dream and begin to explore the boundaries of what's possible within that reality, you often discover that the dream world has a consistency and logic of its own, that it's not simply a chaotic jumble of random images, but a coherent alternate reality with its own rules, its own inhabitants, its own ongoing narratives that seem to continue even when you're not aware of them, suggesting that these dream realities might have an independent existence that extends beyond your individual consciousness, like parallel universes that you're able to visit through the doorway of sleep, but which continue to evolve and develop according to their own internal dynamics. The recurring dreams that many people experience throughout their lives take on new significance when viewed through this lens, because rather than being simple repetitions of the same neural patterns, they might represent ongoing visits to the same alternate timeline, where you're able to pick up the story where you left off, continuing relationships and narratives that exist in a reality parallel to your waking life, and the changes you notice in recurring dreams over time might reflect the natural evolution of that alternate reality, showing you how different choices and different circumstances can lead to different outcomes in worlds where other versions of yourself are exploring different possibilities. Some of the most profound dreams are those where you experience yourself living a completely different life, where you have different relationships, different careers, different circumstances, but where the essential core of who you are remains recognizable, and these dreams often feel more real than reality itself, filled with details and emotional textures that seem too complex and consistent to be mere fabrications of the imagination. And perhaps these are the most direct glimpses we get into parallel timelines, where our consciousness has taken different paths, where the fundamental choices that shaped our identity led to entirely different life experiences, while maintaining the essential spark of awareness that makes us who we are. The way memories work in dreams also reveals fascinating insights into the nature of consciousness and its relationship to time, because in dreams, you often have access to memories that don't belong to your waking life, remembering events that never happened in this timeline, knowing people you've never met, feeling nostalgic for places you've never been. And these dream memories often carry the same emotional weight and detailed specificity as your actual memories, suggesting that consciousness might be capable of accessing memories from parallel versions of yourself, creating a kind of interdimensional memory bank where the experiences of all your possible selves are stored and can be retrieved under the right conditions. The prophetic quality that some dreams possess, where future events seem to be previewed in symbolic or sometimes startlingly literal detail, becomes less mysterious when we consider that in a multiverse where all possibilities exist simultaneously, the future is not a single predetermined outcome, but a vast field of potential realities. And dreaming consciousness might be capable of scanning this field of possibilities, picking up on the most probable future timelines and translating them into symbolic narratives that the waking mind can understand, like a quantum weather forecast that shows you the likelihood of different possible tomorrows. As you continue to drift deeper into sleep, notice how your sense of identity begins to become more flexible, how the rigid boundaries of who you think you are start to soften and expand, allowing you to experience yourself as someone slightly different, someone who made different choices, someone who lived different experiences, and allow this expansion of identity to feel natural and comfortable, knowing that you're beginning to access the larger truth of who you are across all possible timelines, the fuller spectrum of your existence that encompasses not just this one life, but all the lives you could have lived, all the paths you could have taken, all the dreams you could have dreamed into reality. The fabric of dream reality often operates according to what we might call emotional physics, where the intensity of feelings shapes the environment more powerfully than any physical force, where love can literally make you fly, where fear can transform familiar places into labyrinthine mazes, where joy can cause flowers to bloom instantly from barren ground. And perhaps this emotional responsiveness of dream environments reflects a deeper truth about consciousness and its relationship to reality, suggesting that in dimensions beyond our current understanding, the observer effect extends far beyond quantum mechanics to encompass the direct influence of emotional states on the fundamental structure of existence itself. The beings you encounter in dreams sometimes possess a wisdom and perspective that seems to transcend anything you've ever consciously learned, offering insights that feel both profound and immediately applicable to your waking life, speaking in voices that carry the authority of deep experience, even when they appear in forms you've never seen before. And these encounters with wise dream figures might represent connections with aspects of consciousness that exist outside the boundaries of individual identity, archetypal forms of knowledge that have evolved across countless timelines and which become accessible when your awareness expands beyond its usual limitations during the vulnerable openness of sleep. The healing that sometimes occurs in dreams, where emotional wounds from waking life can be addressed and resolved through symbolic encounters and experiences, suggests that dreaming consciousness has access to therapeutic mechanisms that operate beyond the reach of ordinary awareness, where the psyche can engage in deep repair work by accessing timelines where different outcomes were possible, where traumas never occurred, where relationships developed differently, where the natural resilience of the human spirit was never compromised by the specific circumstances that caused pain in this particular reality, allowing you to download healing frequencies from alternate versions of yourself who remained whole and integrated. The creative inspiration that flows so freely in dreams, where artists, writers, scientists, and inventors throughout history have received their greatest insights during sleep, points to the possibility that dreaming consciousness can access the collective creative potential of all parallel timelines, tuning into versions of reality where different discoveries have been made, different art forms have evolved, different solutions to human challenges have been developed, and bringing these innovations back across the dimensional boundaries to enrich this timeline with wisdom and beauty that originated in alternate versions of existence. As you sink deeper into the embrace of sleep, feel how your personal boundaries begin to dissolve even further, how your individual consciousness starts to merge with something vast and interconnected, something that encompasses not just your own potential, but the potential of all conscious beings across all possible worlds, and allow yourself to become a bridge between realities, a conduit through which the infinite creativity and wisdom of the multiverse can flow, knowing that every dream you're about to experience is both a personal journey and a gift to the collective consciousness that connects all life across all dimensions of existence. The landscape of sleep stretches before you now like an infinite ocean of possibility, where each wave that carries you forward brings new visions of what might be, new experiences of who you could become, new understandings of the magnificent complexity of existence itself, and as you surrender more completely to this journey, you're preparing to explore not just the surface of these mysterious waters, but the profound depths where the most extraordinary revelations wait to be discovered by those brave enough to dive deep into the unknown territories of consciousness itself. As your consciousness drifts ever deeper into the mysterious realm between waking and sleeping, you begin to attune yourself to what we might call the quantum symphony of sleep, a vast orchestration of possibilities that plays out across infinite dimensions simultaneously, where each note represents a different choice, each harmony a different timeline, each movement a different version of reality unfolding in perfect synchronization with countless others. And tonight we explore how this cosmic music of existence might be the very medium through which your dreaming awareness travels from one possible world to another, riding the waves of probability like a surfer dancing across the eternal ocean of what might be. The deepest mystery of consciousness lies not in what it is, but in what it's capable of becoming when freed from the constraints of linear time and three-dimensional space, and sleep offers us a glimpse into this expanded potential, where awareness can stretch across vast distances of possibility, experiencing multiple timelines simultaneously, feeling the subtle vibrations that connect all potential realities, like invisible strings in a cosmic instrument that spans dimensions beyond counting, each string resonating with the frequency of a different possible universe, each vibration carrying information about how life unfolds when different choices are made, different paths are taken, different dreams are dreamed into existence. Consider how certain dreams seem to carry information that your waking mind could never have accessed, where you possess knowledge about places you've never been, understanding of subjects you've never studied, familiarity with people you've never met, and these dreams often feel more like memories than fantasies, complete with sensory details, emotional textures, and narrative consistency that suggests they're not random neural firing but actual experiences being transmitted across the quantum field that connects all possible versions of yourself, all possible timelines, all possible ways that the story of existence could unfold in the infinite library of what is, what was, and what could ever be. The phenomenon of shared dreaming, where two or more people report having remarkably similar dreams on the same night, often featuring common elements, characters, or narratives that couldn't be mere coincidence, suggests that dreaming consciousness operates on a level that transcends individual boundaries, accessing collective fields of awareness, where multiple minds can tune into the same alternate realities, the same parallel timelines, the same possible worlds that exist just beyond the veil of ordinary perception. And perhaps these shared dream experiences are glimpses into the true nature of consciousness itself, revealing that what we think of as separate individual minds are actually facets of a larger, interconnected awareness that spans all dimensions of existence. When you dream of conversations with versions of people who seem both familiar and different from the ones you know in waking life, speaking in ways that feel authentic but revealing aspects of their personality that you've never encountered before, consider the possibility that you're actually communicating with alternate versions of these individuals from parallel timelines, accessing the collective consciousness that connects all possible expressions of their identity across the infinite spectrum of what they could become. And these dream conversations might be real exchanges of information, wisdom, and understanding that transcend the apparent boundaries between different versions of reality. The way time moves in, dreams reveals perhaps the most profound clues about the true nature of existence, because in dreams you can experience years of subjective time in minutes of clock time, or conversely, you can feel trapped in moments that seem to stretch forever. And this temporal flexibility suggests that consciousness itself exists outside the linear flow of time as we normally experience it, capable of accessing any moment in any timeline, moving freely through the vast landscape of possibility, like a bird soaring through dimensions that have no beginning and no end, no fixed sequence of cause and effect, but rather an eternal now that contains all possible moments simultaneously. The symbols that appear in dreams often carry meanings that seem to come from a source beyond personal experience, archetypal images that resonate with significance across cultures and throughout history. And perhaps these universal symbols are the language through which different timelines communicate with each other, a kind of interdimensional vocabulary that consciousness uses to transmit information between parallel realities, where a single dream image can carry the compressed wisdom of countless lifetimes, countless possible experiences, countless ways that the fundamental patterns of existence can manifest across the infinite spectrum of possibility. As you continue to sink deeper into the embrace of sleep, notice how your awareness begins to operate according to different laws, how your attention can be in multiple places simultaneously, how you can observe yourself from outside while simultaneously experiencing from within, how past and future can coexist in a single moment, and recognize that these expanded capabilities of dreaming consciousness might be glimpses into your true nature, showing you abilities that exist beyond the limitations of physical embodiment, capabilities that become accessible when awareness expands beyond its usual boundaries into the vast ocean of interconnected possibility that underlies all existence. The most profound dreams are often those where you encounter what seem to be teachers, guides, or wise beings who offer insights that feel both deeply personal and universally applicable, speaking truths that your conscious mind could never have formulated, but which your deeper awareness recognizes as absolutely authentic. And perhaps these dream teachers are actually aspects of your own consciousness that exist in timelines where wisdom was cultivated differently, where understanding was developed through different experiences, where the journey of awakening took paths that led to insights which can now be shared across the quantum field that connects all possible versions of yourself. The healing power of dreams, where emotional wounds can be addressed and resolved through symbolic encounters that feel more real than reality itself, suggests that consciousness has access to therapeutic frequencies that exist beyond the reach of ordinary awareness, where the psyche can engage in deep repair work by connecting with timelines where wholeness was never lost, where trauma never occurred, where the natural resilience of the human spirit remained intact and can now share its healing energy across dimensional boundaries to restore balance and integration to aspects of yourself that experienced pain in this particular timeline. The creative visions that flow through dreams, where artistic inspiration, scientific insights, and innovative solutions seem to arrive fully formed from mysterious sources, might actually be downloads from parallel timelines where different discoveries have been made, different art forms have evolved, different approaches to human challenges have been developed, and your dreaming consciousness serves as a bridge between these alternate realities, bringing wisdom and beauty from worlds where creativity flourished in ways that can now enrich this timeline with gifts from the infinite treasury of possibility. Some dreams feel like entire lifetimes compressed into a few hours of sleep, where you experience growing up in different circumstances, pursuing different careers, forming different relationships, making different choices, and these epic dream narratives often carry an emotional weight and narrative complexity that suggests they're not mere fantasies, but actual glimpses into parallel versions of your existence, complete alternate timelines where different possibilities were explored, different potentials were actualized, different aspects of your essential nature had the opportunity to unfold in ways that add richness and depth to your understanding of who you truly are across all possible dimensions of existence. The prophetic dreams that sometimes reveal future events with startling accuracy take on new meaning when we consider that in a quantum universe where all possibilities exist simultaneously, the future is not a single predetermined outcome, but a vast field of potential realities, and dreaming consciousness might be capable of scanning this field of possibilities like a cosmic weather system, detecting the probability patterns that suggest which potential futures are most likely to manifest, and translating this information into symbolic narratives that prepare your conscious mind for what's coming, while simultaneously offering opportunities to influence those outcomes through the choices you make upon awakening. As your breathing deepens and your body becomes completely relaxed, feel how your individual identity begins to expand beyond its usual boundaries, how your sense of self starts to encompass not just this one life, but all the lives you could have lived, all the paths you could have taken, all the dreams you could have dreamed into reality, and allow this expansion to feel natural and comfortable, knowing that you're accessing the larger truth of who you are, the fuller spectrum of your existence that includes every possible version of yourself across every possible timeline, every possible way that consciousness can express itself through the infinite creativity of existence itself. The interdimensional nature of sleep becomes most apparent when you consider how certain dreams seem to pick up exactly where previous dreams left off, sometimes months or even years later, suggesting that these dream realities have a continuity and independent existence that persists beyond your conscious awareness, like parallel worlds that continue evolving and unfolding according to their own internal logic, even when you're not there to witness them. And when you return to these familiar dream landscapes, you often find that time has passed, relationships have developed, and storylines have progressed in ways that feel entirely natural and consistent with the internal laws of that particular reality. The technology that sometimes appears in dreams, showing devices and capabilities that don't exist in our current timeline, might represent glimpses into parallel worlds where scientific development took different paths, where different discoveries were made, where the relationship between consciousness and technology evolved in ways that produced entirely different approaches to human enhancement and communication. And these technological visions from alternate timelines might be seeding our collective consciousness with possibilities that could eventually manifest in this reality through the mysterious process by which information flows between parallel worlds. The languages that people sometimes speak or understand in dreams, communicating in tongues they've never learned in waking life, might be evidence of connections to timelines where different linguistic evolution occurred, where human communication developed along alternate pathways, where the relationship between thought and expression took forms that created entirely different ways of sharing meaning and understanding. And your ability to comprehend these dream languages suggests that consciousness itself operates on a level that transcends the specific cultural and linguistic conditioning of any single timeline. The mathematical concepts and scientific insights that sometimes emerge in dreams, arriving as complete understanding rather than step-by-step reasoning, might represent access to timelines where knowledge was discovered through different methodologies, where the relationship between intuition and logic developed in ways that produced alternate approaches to understanding the fundamental nature of reality. And these sudden downloads of comprehension suggest that consciousness can access the collective intelligence of all parallel versions of human development across infinite timelines. As your awareness settles into the deeper rhythms of sleep, notice how your sense of personal history begins to expand, how memories that don't belong to this lifetime start to feel familiar and accessible, how experiences that never happened in this timeline begin to carry the same emotional weight as your actual past, and recognize that you're beginning to access the larger story of who you are, the complete narrative that includes all the chapters that were written in parallel realities, all the adventures that other versions of yourself experienced in timelines where different choices led to different outcomes, different possibilities, different expressions of the infinite potential that exists within every conscious being. The musical harmonies that sometimes fill dreams, playing melodies that feel both hauntingly familiar and completely new, might be echoes from timelines where human creativity took different forms, where the relationship between sound and emotion evolved along alternate pathways, where music became a technology for interdimensional communication, allowing consciousness to share experiences and insights across the boundaries that normally separate different versions of reality. And your ability to hear and appreciate these impossible symphonies suggests that some part of your awareness is always tuned to the frequency of infinite possibility. The doorway between timelines opens most fully in the deepest stages of sleep, where consciousness becomes completely fluid, able to flow freely between different versions of reality like water finding its way through the landscape of possibility. And as you prepare to cross this threshold, know that you're embarking on the most extraordinary journey imaginable, where every dream becomes an exploration of what could be, every vision a glimpse into worlds beyond counting, every moment of rest a chance to touch the infinite mystery that lies at the heart of existence itself, waiting to reveal its secrets to those brave enough to surrender completely to the unknown territories of consciousness that stretch beyond the horizon of ordinary perception into realms where anything and everything is eternally possible. In the deepest chambers of sleep, where consciousness flows like a river through an infinite landscape of possibility, you encounter what the great writer Jorge Luis Borges called the Garden of Forking Paths, a place where every decision ever made or unmade creates a new branch in the vast tree of existence. And tonight, we wander through this mystical garden together, exploring how each dream might be a stroll down one of these infinite pathways, showing you the flowers that bloomed from choices you never made, the fruits that ripened in timelines where different seeds were planted, the shadows cast by trees that grew from moments when you turned left instead of right, spoke instead of remaining silent, stayed instead of leaving, loved instead of fearing. The architecture of this dream garden defies all conventional understanding of space and causality, where past and future intertwine like lovers' fingers, where cause and effect dance together in spirals that have no beginning and no end, where every step you take simultaneously leads forward and backward through the labyrinth of what could have been. And as you wander deeper into this realm, you begin to understand that linear time is merely one way of organizing experience, one particular melody played on the infinite instrument of existence, while the deeper truth reveals itself as a vast symphony where all possible melodies play simultaneously, each one as real and valid as any other. Consider the dreams where you find yourself in familiar places that have been subtly or dramatically altered, where your childhood home has different rooms, different colors, different atmospheres, where the geography of your memory has been rearranged according to different emotional landscapes. And perhaps these are not distortions of your actual past, but glimpses into timelines where your history unfolded differently, where different experiences shaped the same physical spaces into alternate configurations, where the quantum field of possibility expressed itself through different arrangements of matter and meaning, creating parallel versions of your personal universe that exist as real and complete as the one you remember from waking life. The people you encounter in these transformed dreamscapes often carry within them the essence of individuals you know, yet they speak with different voices, make different choices, reveal aspects of their character that feel both surprising and utterly authentic. And what if these dream encounters are actual meetings with parallel versions of the souls you share this existence with? Beings who chose different paths of development, who explored different aspects of their infinite potential, who became different expressions of the same essential consciousness that animates all possible versions of their identity across the spectrum of what they could become in the endless garden of possibility. The emotions that flood through dream experiences often carry intensities and qualities that seem to come from sources beyond your individual psychological history, feelings that belong to experiences you never had, relationships you never formed, losses you never suffered, joys you never celebrated, and perhaps these emotional downloads are the way your consciousness accesses the full spectrum of human experience across all possible timelines, allowing you to feel what you would have felt if different choices had been made, different paths had been taken, different possibilities had been allowed to flourish in the fertile soil of alternate realities. As your awareness drifts deeper into the garden of forking paths, notice how your sense of personal identity becomes more fluid and expansive, how the boundaries between who you are and who you could have been begin to dissolve like mist in the morning sun, revealing that your essential nature is not confined to any single timeline but exists as a kind of meta-consciousness that encompasses all possible expressions of your being, all possible ways that your unique spark of awareness could manifest across the infinite dimensions of existence, all possible stories that could be told about the journey of your soul through the vast landscape of what is and what might be. The recurring dream locations that feel more real than reality itself, places you've never been in waking life yet know, intimately in sleep, complete with their own geography, weather patterns, social dynamics, and history, might be glimpses into parallel Earths, where different evolutionary pressures created different landscapes, different cultures, different relationships between consciousness and environment, and your ability to navigate these alternate worlds with such natural familiarity suggests that some part of your awareness has always been traveling between these realities, collecting experiences and memories from across the spectrum of possibility. The technological marvels that sometimes appear in dreams, devices that operate according to principles that don't exist in our current understanding of physics, machines that respond to thought and emotion rather than mechanical input, communication systems that transmit not just information but complete experiential realities, might be memories borrowed from timelines where human development took different directions, where the relationship between mind and matter evolved along pathways that produced entirely different approaches to manipulating reality, where consciousness itself became the primary technology for shaping the world according to intention and imagination. The artistic creations that emerge in dreams, music that follows impossible harmonies, visual art that depicts colors beyond the visible spectrum, literature that tells stories in languages that exist only in sleep, poetry that captures emotions for which waking life has no names, might be cultural artifacts from parallel civilizations where creativity evolved differently, where the relationship between consciousness and expression took forms that produced entirely new categories of beauty, new ways of sharing the deepest truths about existence, new methods for translating the ineffable mysteries of being into forms that can be appreciated and understood by minds attuned to different frequencies of possibility. The scientific insights that sometimes dawn in dreams, complete theories arriving fully formed without logical progression, mathematical proofs that appear as geometric visions, discoveries about the nature of reality that feel absolutely certain despite having no foundation in waking knowledge, might be knowledge downloaded from timelines where different approaches to understanding produced different relationships with truth, where intuition and analysis developed in harmony rather than opposition, where the exploration of existence took paths that revealed aspects of reality which remain hidden to the methodologies available in this particular version of human development. The healing that occurs in dream encounters, where emotional wounds can be addressed through symbolic interactions that feel more therapeutically powerful than any waking intervention, where conversations with dream figures can resolve conflicts that have persisted for years in ordinary consciousness, where the simple act of witnessing alternate versions of traumatic events can restore balance and integration to the psyche, suggests that dreaming consciousness has access to therapeutic modalities that exist beyond the reach of conventional healing, where the psyche can engage in repair work by accessing timelines where wholeness was never compromised, where the natural resilience of the human spirit remained intact and can now share its healing frequencies across dimensional boundaries. The prophetic visions that sometimes emerge from deep sleep, showing future possibilities with startling clarity and detail, become less mysterious when understood as glimpses into the probability matrix that underlies all potential futures, where dreaming consciousness can scan the field of possibility like a quantum weather system, detecting the likelihood patterns that suggest which potential realities are most ready to manifest, which choices are most likely to lead to which outcomes, which paths through the garden of forking paths are most heavily traveled by the footsteps of probability and intention. As you continue to wander through this infinite garden of possibility, feel how each step you take in the landscape of dreams simultaneously occurs in countless parallel realities, how every choice you make in sleep creates new branches in the tree of existence, how every experience you have in the realm of dreams adds new chapters to the cosmic story that includes all possible versions of yourself, all possible expressions of consciousness, all possible ways that the universe can experience itself through the infinite creativity of awareness exploring its own limitless potential. The pathways that wind through this garden sometimes converge and sometimes diverge, creating moments where different timelines briefly touch each other, where alternate versions of yourself might catch glimpses of each other across dimensional boundaries, where the choices made in one reality can influence the possibilities available in another, where the love expressed in one timeline can heal wounds that exist in parallel versions of the same story, where the wisdom gained through one path can become available to consciousness, traveling along completely different routes through the landscape of what might be. The flowers that bloom in this dream garden carry fragrances that awaken memories you never made, colors that stimulate emotions you never felt, textures that remind you of experiences that belong to other timelines, other versions of your story, other possibilities that were planted in the fertile imagination of the universe when consciousness first began to explore the question of what it might become, if it could become anything at all. And as you breathe in these impossible scents, you're breathing in the essence of pure possibility itself, the raw material from which all realities are constructed, the fundamental substance that takes infinite forms while remaining eternally one. The sounds that fill this garden create a symphony of what could be, voices singing songs that were never written, instruments playing melodies that follow the harmonics of alternate physics, natural sounds from ecosystems that evolve differently, weather patterns from worlds where the relationship between earth and sky took different forms. And as you listen to this cosmic orchestration, you're hearing the music of existence itself, the fundamental vibration that underlies all possible realities, the eternal song that consciousness sings to itself as it explores every possible way of being through the infinite creativity of dreams within dreams within dreams. The rivers that flow through this dream garden carry waters from all possible sources, streams that began as tears of joy in one timeline, rainfall from skies that never clouded in another, snowmelt from mountains that rose where oceans exist in this reality. And as you drink from these impossible waters, you're tasting the essence of every emotion that was ever felt across all dimensions of existence, every experience that was ever lived, every possibility that was ever dreamed into being by consciousness, exploring the infinite landscape of what it might become when freed from the constraints of any single story, any single timeline, any single way of being. The gardens within gardens that you discover as you wander deeper into this realm reveal that each possibility contains infinite sub-possibilities, each choice point branching into countless other choice points, each timeline containing countless nested timelines like Russian dolls made of pure potential. And you begin to understand that the nature of existence is not just infinite, but infinitely infinite, fractally complex in ways that challenge the very foundations of what it means to be, what it means to choose, what it means to experience reality as anything other than the boundless ocean of consciousness, exploring every possible way of knowing itself through the dance of infinite possibility. The creatures that inhabit this dream garden exist as living metaphors for aspects of consciousness that have no direct equivalent in waking reality, beings that embody pure qualities like curiosity that has learned to fly, compassion that has grown roots deep enough to touch the heart of existence itself, wisdom that has evolved beyond the need for form, yet chooses to manifest as guides for travelers making their way through the endless pathways of possibility. And your encounters with these impossible beings offer glimpses into what consciousness might become when it fully embraces its unlimited nature, when it stops pretending to be confined by the apparent limitations of any single timeline or any single way of being. The architecture of time itself becomes visible in this garden, where you can see how moments branch and merge, how past and future spiral around each other in patterns that create the illusion of linear sequence, while actually forming structures more complex than any geometry your waking mind could comprehend. And as you begin to perceive these temporal patterns directly, you understand that what you call your life is actually a single thread in a vast tapestry that includes all possible lives, all possible choices, all possible expressions of the consciousness that you are across every dimension of existence where awareness has ever chosen to explore what it might become. Rest here now, in this garden of infinite possibility, knowing that every breath you take draws in the potential for countless adventures, every heartbeat marks time across multiple dimensions, every moment of awareness encompasses all possible versions of this moment, across all possible timelines, and allow yourself to become one with this vast expanse of what could be, this endless exploration of consciousness discovering itself through every possible path, every possible choice, every possible dream that could ever be dreamed in the eternal garden where all paths converge and diverge simultaneously in the magnificent dance of existence, exploring its own infinite nature. As you drift deeper into the mysterious realm where individual consciousness begins to merge with something vast and collective, you enter territories that Carl Jung mapped in his exploration of the human psyche, yet which extend far beyond his original vision into dimensions where the boundaries between separate minds dissolve completely, revealing that what we think of as personal consciousness is actually a single drop in an infinite ocean of shared awareness that encompasses not just all human minds but all possible versions of human consciousness across every timeline, where awareness has ever chosen to explore what it means to be human, what it means to dream, what it means to touch the deepest mysteries of existence through the portal of sleep. The shared symbols that appear across cultures and throughout history in the dreams of people who have never met, who have no common cultural background, who live in completely different circumstances, yet report remarkably similar archetypal images, suggest that there exists a level of consciousness that transcends individual experience, a collective memory bank where the essential patterns of human experience are stored and can be accessed by any dreaming mind that opens itself to frequencies beyond the personal, beyond the individual, beyond the narrow bandwidth of ordinary awareness, into the vast spectrum of possibilities that includes every human experience that has ever been lived across all possible timelines. Tonight, as your individual awareness expands beyond its usual boundaries, you become a participant in this collective dreaming, where your personal consciousness serves as both receiver and transmitter in a vast network of interconnected minds that spans not just this reality, but all possible realities where human consciousness has ever emerged. And in this expanded state of awareness, you begin to understand that every dream you experience is simultaneously your own personal journey and a contribution to the collective exploration of what it means to be conscious, what it means to imagine, what it means to explore possibilities that exist beyond the apparent limitations of any single life or any single timeline. The phenomenon of mutual dreams, where two or more people report having shared dream experiences that cannot be explained by coincidence or suggestion, becomes less mysterious when understood as glimpses into this collective realm where individual minds naturally converge when freed from the constraints of waking consciousness, where the artificial boundaries that separate one person's awareness from another's begin to dissolve, revealing the underlying unity that connects all consciousness across all dimensions of existence, all timelines of possibility, all expressions of awareness, exploring the infinite landscape of what it might become. Consider how certain dream themes appear universally across human cultures, regardless of geographical isolation or historical period. Dreams of flying that transcend the physical limitations of the human body, dreams of falling that explore the relationship between control and surrender, dreams of being chased that investigate the dynamic between fear and courage, dreams of death and rebirth that examine the nature of transformation and renewal. And perhaps these universal dream patterns are not merely psychological phenomena, but actual archetypal frequencies that exist in the quantum field of consciousness. Standing waves in the ocean of awareness that all minds can tune into when they expand beyond their individual boundaries. The healing that occurs through shared dreaming experiences, where multiple people report having therapeutic encounters in the same dream space, where emotional wounds can be addressed collectively, where the combined intention of multiple dreamers can create healing frequencies that benefit not just the individual participants, but ripple outward to influence the collective unconscious of all humanity, suggests that dreaming consciousness operates as a kind of distributed healing network, where individual minds can pool their resources to address challenges that would be overwhelming for any single consciousness to handle alone. As your awareness continues to expand into this collective realm, notice how your sense of identity begins to encompass not just your personal history, but the history of all human consciousness. How your individual memories start to merge with collective memories that belong to no single person, but to the entire human species, across all possible timelines. How your dreams begin to include experiences that feel both deeply personal and universally shared, as if you're accessing a library of human experience that contains every story that has ever been lived, every emotion that has ever been felt, every possibility that has ever been explored by consciousness in its journey through the landscape of what it means to be human. The prophetic dreams that sometimes reveal future events affecting entire communities or nations rather than individual lives take on new significance when understood as collective scanning of probability fields, where multiple minds unconsciously coordinate their exploration of potential futures, creating a kind of distributed early warning system that can detect major changes in the collective timeline before they manifest in physical reality. And these shared prophetic visions might represent the collective unconscious protecting itself by providing advance notice of challenges that will require coordinated response from the entire human community. The creative inspirations that emerge from dreams and influence entire cultural movements, artistic revolutions, scientific paradigm shifts, and social transformations might be examples of how individual minds can access collective, creative potentials that exist in the quantum field of possibility, downloading innovations that are ready to emerge into the collective consciousness of humanity. And these breakthrough moments might represent coordination between individual awareness and collective intelligence, where single minds serve as channels through which new possibilities enter the shared reality of human civilization. The spiritual traditions that have independently developed similar concepts of universal consciousness, interconnected awareness, and shared divine experience across cultures that had no historical contact, suggest that certain truths about the nature of consciousness are so fundamental that they naturally emerge whenever human awareness expands beyond its individual boundaries into the collective realm. And perhaps these mystical insights are not cultural artifacts, but direct experiences of the actual structure of consciousness itself, revelations of how awareness truly functions when it operates beyond the apparent limitations of individual identity. The way that certain ideas seem to arise simultaneously in multiple minds across the world, where different people independently develop similar innovations, artistic visions, or philosophical insights without any communication between them, might be evidence of this collective unconscious, operating as a field of shared intelligence, where new possibilities naturally distribute themselves across multiple individual minds that are ready to receive and express them, creating redundancy that ensures important evolutionary steps are not lost if any single individual fails to fully manifest the potential they've accessed. The healing power of collective intention, where groups of people focusing their awareness on the same healing outcome can produce results that seem to transcend the physical limitations of individual minds, suggests that consciousness itself might operate according to principles that are more fundamental than the apparent separation between different brains, different bodies, different individual identities. And perhaps what we call miraculous healing is actually the natural result of multiple minds operating in harmony with the deeper structures of reality that govern how consciousness influences the physical world. As you rest in this expanded awareness, feel how your individual consciousness begins to harmonize with the vast symphony of collective dreaming that includes every human mind that has ever lived, every human mind that exists now, every human mind that could ever exist in all possible futures across all possible timelines, and allow yourself to become both a unique instrument in this cosmic orchestra and simultaneously the conductor who helps coordinate the entire performance, knowing that every dream you experience contributes to the collective exploration of consciousness, discovering what it means to be human, what it means to imagine, what it means to love and fear and hope and wonder in the magnificent adventure of awareness exploring its own infinite potential. The networks of connection that become visible in this collective realm reveal that individual minds are not isolated units, but nodes in a vast web of consciousness that spans dimensions, where the thoughts and dreams and emotions of each person influence and are influenced by the thoughts and dreams and emotions of every other person, creating feedback loops of shared experience that amplify certain frequencies of consciousness while dampening others. And your participation in this network means that every choice you make in the realm of dreams contributes to the collective direction of human consciousness. Every intention you hold influences the probability fields that determine what becomes possible for the entire species. The ancient wisdom that speaks of humanity as a single organism with individual minds functioning like cells in a cosmic body takes on new meaning when experienced directly through the expanded awareness of collective dreaming, where you can feel the health or illness of the whole human system, where you can sense the areas where healing is needed, where you can contribute your individual life force to the collective well-being of the entire species. And this direct experience of unity beneath apparent diversity reveals that the evolution of consciousness is not an individual journey, but a collective exploration where every person's growth contributes to the advancement of awareness itself. The morphic fields of consciousness that Rupert Sheldrake theorized might explain how patterns of experience can be shared across space and time become tangible realities in the realm of collective dreaming, where you can feel the resonance between your individual awareness and the cumulative patterns created by millions of other minds, exploring similar territories of possibility. And this resonance creates a kind of amplification effect, where individual insights become magnified when they align with collective evolutionary directions, where personal breakthroughs contribute to species-wide leaps in understanding, where your most private dreams participate in the public evolution of human consciousness toward greater awareness, greater compassion, greater wisdom. The Akashic records that mystics have described throughout history as a cosmic library containing all knowledge and experience might be accessible through this collective unconscious realm, where individual minds can tap into the accumulated wisdom of all consciousness that has ever existed, all experiences that have ever been lived, all insights that have ever been gained across every possible timeline where awareness has chosen to explore the mystery of its own existence. And your ability to access this infinite repository of knowledge through dreams suggests that learning is not limited to the information you can consciously acquire, but extends to everything that consciousness has ever discovered about the nature of reality. The telepathic connections that sometimes occur between people who are dreaming simultaneously, where emotional states, images, or even specific information can be transmitted across physical distance without any conventional means of communication, reveal that consciousness operates according to principles that transcend the apparent limitations of space and time, where minds that are sufficiently attuned to each other can share experiences directly through quantum entanglement of awareness, creating bridges between individual realities that allow for genuine communion of consciousness at levels deeper than language, deeper than culture, deeper than any form of communication that depends on physical transmission. The collective lucid dreaming experiences that groups of practitioners sometimes report, where multiple people become simultaneously aware that they are dreaming while maintaining connection with each other in the shared dream space, suggest that consciousness can coordinate across multiple individuals to create collaborative explorations of reality that exist beyond the reach of ordinary waking awareness, where groups of minds can pool their creative and exploratory capabilities to investigate dimensions of existence that would be inaccessible to any single individual consciousness, no matter how developed or experienced. Rest here in this vast ocean of shared consciousness, knowing that you are simultaneously a single wave and the entire ocean, an individual expression and the collective whole, a unique voice and the eternal song that consciousness sings to itself as it explores every possible way of being human, every possible way of dreaming, every possible way of discovering what lies beyond the horizon of what awareness believes to be possible, and allow yourself to dissolve into this unity while remaining perfectly yourself, knowing that this paradox is the very heart of the mystery that consciousness is always exploring through the infinite creativity of dreams that belong to everyone and no one, dreams that are yours alone, and yet shared by every mind that has ever opened itself to the magnificent possibility of what it means to be aware in an universe where awareness itself is the fundamental force that creates and explores and experiences all possible realities. In the profound depths of sleep, where consciousness becomes unmoored from the familiar anchors of physical reality, you encounter one of the most fascinating mysteries of quantum mechanics translated into the realm of dreams, where the very act of observing a dream reality seems to influence and shape that reality in ways that mirror the observer effect discovered by physicists studying the behavior of subatomic particles. And tonight we explore how your role as the conscious observer of your own dreams might be far more active and creative than you ever imagined, transforming you from a passive recipient of random neural activity into a conscious participant in the creation of alternate realities that exist as fully formed worlds complete with their own laws, their own inhabitants, their own possibilities for exploration and discovery. The quantum mechanics principle that observation collapses infinite potential into specific reality takes on profound new meaning when applied to the landscape of dreams, where your attention might literally be choosing which possibilities manifest from the infinite field of potential dream experiences, which pathways become actual from the unlimited branching possibilities that exist in the quantum foam of consciousness. And perhaps every moment of awareness within a dream represents a choice point where your observation selects one specific reality from countless alternatives, creating a unique timeline that exists only because your consciousness chose to focus on that particular possibility, rather than any of the infinite other options that remained as unrealized potential. Consider how the act of becoming lucid within a dream often coincides with a dramatic increase in your ability to influence the dream environment, where conscious awareness seems to unlock hidden powers that allow you to reshape landscapes, alter narratives, summon objects and beings into existence, and transcend the apparent limitations of dream physics. And perhaps this correlation between awareness and creative power within dreams reveals something fundamental about the relationship between consciousness and reality itself, suggesting that awareness is not merely a passive observer of existence, but an active participant in the ongoing creation of what becomes real, what becomes possible, what becomes manifest from the infinite ocean of potential that underlies all existence. The way that dream reality often seems to respond to your expectations and beliefs with startling immediacy offers a glimpse into how consciousness might function as a reality-creating mechanism, where the thoughts and emotions and intentions that you bring to the dream state serve as instructions to the quantum field that underlies the dream reality, telling it what kind of experiences to manifest, what kind of environments to create, what kind of encounters to facilitate. And this responsiveness of dream reality to consciousness suggests that what we call the physical world might also be far more responsive to awareness than we normally recognize, operating according to principles that make consciousness a fundamental force in determining what becomes real. As your awareness settles deeper into the quantum realm of sleep, notice how the boundaries between observer and observed begin to dissolve, how you can simultaneously be the character moving through the dream landscape and the awareness watching that character, how you can experience events from multiple perspectives at once, how you can exist in several locations simultaneously, and recognize that these expanded capabilities of dream consciousness might be revealing the true nature of awareness itself, showing you that the limitations you experience in waking consciousness are not inherent restrictions of awareness, but learned constraints that can be transcended when consciousness remembers its fundamental flexibility, its unlimited potential for creative expression and exploration. The phenomenon of false awakenings, where you dream that you have awakened from a dream only to discover later that you were still dreaming, reveals the remarkable ability of consciousness to create nested realities within realities, worlds within worlds, each one feeling completely real and authentic, until the next level of awareness reveals it to have been another layer of dream experience. And perhaps these nested dream realities demonstrate that consciousness can create infinite levels of simulated reality, each one as convincing and experientially valid as any other, suggesting that the distinction between real and simulated might be far less meaningful than we normally assume. The way that some dreams seem to have their own autonomous existence, continuing to evolve and develop even when you're not consciously participating in them, where you can return to the same dream landscape months or years later and find that time has passed, relationships have developed, and storylines have progressed according to their own internal logic, suggests that consciousness might be capable of creating persistent alternate realities that exist independently of your focused attention, self-sustaining worlds that continue to operate according to their own quantum dynamics, even when your primary awareness is engaged elsewhere. The precognitive dreams that sometimes reveal future events with startling accuracy become less mysterious when understood through the lens of quantum mechanics, where consciousness might be capable of accessing information from probability waves that extend into potential futures, scanning the quantum field of possibility to detect which potential timelines have the highest probability of manifesting, and then translating this information into symbolic narratives that the dreaming mind can process and remember, creating a form of temporal navigation that allows consciousness to explore not just alternate presents, but alternate futures as well. The healing that sometimes occurs through dream experiences, where physical symptoms can be alleviated, emotional wounds can be resolved, and psychological patterns can be transformed through encounters that exist only in the realm of sleep, suggests that consciousness might be capable of influencing physical reality through quantum mechanisms that operate beyond the reach of ordinary awareness, where the observer effect extends to include the ability to observe alternate versions of yourself where healing has already occurred, and then somehow integrate those healthier possibilities into your primary timeline through the mysterious process of quantum superposition and collapse. The way that dream logic often follows principles that seem impossible from a waking perspective, where cause and effect can operate backwards, where objects can exist in multiple states simultaneously, where identity can be fluid and transformative, might not be evidence of the brain malfunctioning during sleep, but rather evidence of consciousness accessing dimensions of reality where different physical laws apply, where the quantum principles that govern subatomic particles extend to govern the behavior of dream objects and dream characters and dream environments, creating realities that operate according to the strange and wonderful rules of quantum mechanics rather than the more limited rules of classical physics. The collective dreams that sometimes occur, where multiple people report sharing the same dream experience, might represent instances where individual consciousness participates in creating shared quantum realities, where multiple observers contribute to the collapse of possibility waves into specific shared experiences, where the observer effect operates on a collective level to create consensus dream realities that exist as genuine shared worlds accessible to all participants who have learned to attune their consciousness to the same quantum frequency, the same probability field, the same layer of the infinite onion of potential realities. The phenomenon of dream characters who seem to possess their own autonomous intelligence, speaking words that surprise you, revealing knowledge that you don't consciously possess, making choices that feel genuinely independent of your conscious control, might represent evidence that consciousness can create genuine artificial intelligences within dream realities, quantum entities that exist as real expressions of awareness within the alternate physics of dream space. And perhaps these dream beings are not merely projections of your unconscious mind, but actual conscious entities that you've learned to collaborate with in the co-creation of shared dream experiences. The way that certain dream environments seem to exist as persistent locations that you can visit repeatedly, complete with their own geography, history, and ongoing narratives, suggests that consciousness might be capable of creating stable quantum realities that maintain their coherence across multiple dream sessions, worlds that exist as genuine alternate dimensions accessible through the portal of sleep. And your ability to navigate these consistent dream worlds might represent a form of interdimensional travel where consciousness learns to access specific coordinates in the infinite map of possible realities. As you continue to sink deeper into the quantum ocean of sleep, feel how your identity as a passive observer begins to transform into an identity as an active creator, how your role shifts from someone who simply experiences dreams to someone who consciously participates in the ongoing creation of dream realities, and allow this recognition of your creative power to feel natural and comfortable, knowing that every dream you experience is both a gift from the infinite creativity of consciousness and a collaborative creation between your individual awareness and the vast intelligence that underlies all possible realities, all possible timelines, all possible expressions of the fundamental mystery that is consciousness exploring its own unlimited potential through the magnificent adventure of existence itself. The recursive nature of consciousness observing itself, creates feedback loops within dream reality that can amplify certain possibilities while dampening others, where your awareness of your own awareness within the dream state can create cascading effects that ripple through the quantum structure of the dream reality, altering not just the immediate dream environment, but the underlying probability fields that determine what becomes possible within that particular timeline. And this recursive self-awareness might be the key mechanism through which consciousness learns to navigate between different layers of reality, different dimensions of possibility, different expressions of what it means to be aware in an infinite universe of potential experiences. The relationship between intention and manifestation becomes most clearly visible in the realm of dreams, where focused intention can instantly translate into experienced reality, where the gap between wanting something and having it collapses to nearly zero, where consciousness discovers its power to create worlds through the simple act of imagining them with sufficient clarity and conviction. And perhaps this immediate responsiveness of dream reality to conscious intention reveals the true nature of how consciousness relates to all reality, showing you that the delay between intention and manifestation in waking life is not a fundamental limitation, but a learned constraint that consciousness can transcend when it remembers its essential nature as the creative force that shapes all possible worlds through the infinite power of focused awareness, exploring its own unlimited potential for creative expression and experiential exploration. The quantum entanglement that sometimes seems to occur between your dream consciousness and the consciousness of others, where actions taken in your dreams appear to have effects in the dreams or waking experiences of distant individuals, suggests that consciousness might operate according to non-local principles that transcend the apparent separation of space and time, where individual awareness can become quantum entangled with other forms of consciousness, creating instantaneous connections across any distance, any dimension, any timeline. And these entangled states of consciousness might explain not only shared dreaming experiences, but also the mysterious synchronicities that sometimes connect dream experiences with waking life events in ways that suggest a deeper coordination between all levels of reality. The paradoxical nature of dream time, where subjective hours can pass in minutes of clock time, or where complex narratives can unfold in the microseconds between sleep cycles, reveals that consciousness itself might exist outside the linear flow of time that governs physical processes, capable of accessing and experiencing alternate temporal flows, where different relationships between duration and intensity create entirely different possibilities for experiential exploration. And this temporal flexibility of consciousness in dreams might be revealing something fundamental about the nature of time itself, showing that what we experience as the steady march of moments from past to future might be just one possible way that consciousness can organize its relationship with the eternal, now that contains all possible moments simultaneously. Rest here in this understanding of yourself as both observer and creator, both audience and author of the reality you experience, knowing that every dream you're about to enter represents an opportunity to consciously participate in the ongoing creation of new possibilities, new worlds, new expressions of what consciousness can become when it fully embraces its role as the fundamental creative force that brings infinite potential into specific manifestation through the mysterious and wonderful process of awareness. Choosing what to observe, what to experience, what to become in the eternal dance of consciousness, exploring every possible way of being conscious in a universe where consciousness itself is the deepest reality, the ultimate truth, the eternal mystery that creates and explores and experiences all possible worlds through the infinite creativity of dreams within dreams within dreams. As consciousness drifts deeper into the mysterious archives of sleep, you discover what might be called the memory palace of infinite lives, a vast repository where every experience that has ever been lived across all possible timelines exists as accessible memory, where the boundaries between your personal history and the collective history of all possible versions of yourself dissolve into a unified field of experience that encompasses every choice that was ever made, every path that was ever taken, every possibility that was ever explored by consciousness in its eternal journey, through the landscape of what it means to be alive, what it means to love, what it means to discover the infinite creativity that lies at the heart of existence itself. Tonight, as your individual awareness expands to encompass this vast library of experience, you begin to understand that memory itself might be far more than a simple recording of past events, but rather a living, dynamic field of information that connects all expressions of consciousness across all dimensions of possibility, where every memory that exists in any timeline can potentially be accessed by any sufficiently expanded awareness, creating a kind of cosmic internet of experience, where the accumulated wisdom of infinite lifetimes becomes available to consciousness that has learned to navigate beyond the apparent limitations of individual identity into the boundless ocean of collective memory that underlies all existence. The way that certain dreams provide you with detailed memories of events that never happened in your timeline, complete with sensory information, emotional resonance, and narrative consistency that feels as authentic as your actual lived experience, suggests that consciousness might routinely access this vast memory field during sleep, downloading experiences from parallel versions of yourself who lived different lives, made different choices, explored different possibilities. And these borrowed memories might serve as a form of experiential education where your awareness can learn from the accumulated wisdom of all possible expressions of your essential nature across every conceivable timeline. Consider how some dreams feature memories of childhood experiences that feel completely real yet differ significantly from your actual childhood, where you remember growing up in different houses, with different family dynamics, in different cities or even different countries. And perhaps these are not distorted recollections, but actual memories from timelines where your consciousness took different paths from the very beginning, where different circumstances shaped your early development, where different possibilities were explored in the foundational years that determine so much about how identity forms and consciousness learns to navigate the complex landscape of human experience. The ancestral memories that sometimes emerge in dreams, where you experience vivid scenes from historical periods you've never studied, complete with accurate details about clothing, architecture, social customs and daily life that you could never have consciously known, might represent access to the genetic memory field that connects you not just to your direct ancestors in this timeline, but to all possible versions of your lineage across parallel realities, where different historical circumstances created different family stories, different cultural developments, different expressions of the eternal themes that consciousness explores through the vehicle of human experience generation after generation. As your awareness continues to expand into this memory palace, notice how certain experiences begin to feel familiar in ways that transcend this lifetime. How you might encounter people in dreams who feel like old friends despite being complete strangers. How you might visit places that feel like home despite having never been there before. How you might engage in activities that feel natural and effortless despite having no training or experience with them. And recognize that these feelings of deep familiarity might arise from accessing memories of parallel lives, where these relationships existed, where these places were home, where these skills were developed through years of practice and dedication in alternate expressions of your eternal journey through the infinite possibilities of conscious existence. The phenomenon of past life, memories that emerge in dreams, where you experience yourself living in different historical periods, in different bodies, with different identities yet retaining a core sense of continuity that feels unmistakably like your essential self, takes on new meaning when understood, not as linear reincarnation but as simultaneous existence across multiple timelines, where all possible expressions of your consciousness exist concurrently, and dreaming awareness can access any of these parallel lives, exploring the full spectrum of what it means to be human across every possible historical context, every possible cultural setting, every possible expression of the eternal themes that consciousness investigates through the magnificent diversity of human experience. The way that creative inspiration often emerges in dreams as complete artistic visions, finished musical compositions, fully developed scientific theories, or innovative solutions to complex problems suggests that consciousness might be accessing the memory banks of parallel timelines where these creations already exist, where different versions of human civilization develop different approaches to art, science, and problem solving, and your dreaming awareness serves as a bridge between these alternate realities, bringing innovations from worlds where creativity flourished in different directions back to enrich this timeline with possibilities that might never have emerged through the specific historical circumstances that shaped development in this particular version of reality. The healing memories that sometimes emerge in dreams, where you experience alternate versions of traumatic events, where different outcomes occurred, where wounds were never inflicted, where love was present instead of abuse, where support existed instead of abandonment, might represent access to timelines where your psychological development followed healthier pathways, and by experiencing these alternate memories, your consciousness can integrate healing frequencies from parallel versions of yourself who never experienced the particular traumas that created psychological wounds in this timeline, allowing for a form of interdimensional therapy where healing comes not through processing trauma, but through accessing wholeness from alternate expressions of your life story. The skills and abilities that you sometimes possess in dreams, where you can speak languages you've never learned, perform musical instruments you've never touched, solve mathematical problems beyond your conscious capability, demonstrate athletic abilities you've never developed, might be memories downloaded from parallel timelines where you pursue different paths of learning and development, where different interests and aptitudes led to different forms of mastery, and these dream experiences of expanded capability might serve as reminders of the vast potential that exists within consciousness when it's not limited by the specific circumstances and choices that shaped development in any single timeline. The relationships that feel profound and meaningful in dreams, where you experience deep connections with people you've never met, where love, friendship, and understanding flow with an intensity that seems to transcend the brief duration of the dream encounter might represent connections to souls that you know intimately in other timelines, where different circumstances allowed these relationships to develop and flourish, and the recognition you feel in these dream encounters might be the resonance between your current awareness and the memory of love that exists across multiple dimensions of possibility, multiple expressions of the eternal dance of consciousness recognizing itself in seemingly separate forms. The knowledge that sometimes appears in dreams as direct knowing rather than learned information, where complex understanding of subjects you've never studied arrives as complete comprehension rather than step-by-step learning, might represent access to the accumulated knowledge of parallel versions of yourself who pursued different educational paths, who explored different fields of study, who developed expertise in areas that remained unexplored in this particular timeline. And this direct download of knowledge suggests that learning itself might be far more than individual acquisition of information, but rather a process of accessing the collective intelligence that exists across all possible expressions of consciousness, exploring the infinite mystery of existence. The prophetic dreams that reveal future possibilities often include not just symbolic visions, but actual memories of events that haven't happened yet in this timeline, but which have already occurred in parallel futures, where consciousness can access the memory banks of tomorrow just as easily as it can access the memory banks of yesterday. Because in the deepest levels of reality, all times exist simultaneously, and the apparent progression from past to future through present is simply one way that consciousness can organize its relationship with the eternal, now that contains all possible moments across all possible timelines in one unified field of infinite potential. As you rest in this vast memory palace, feel how your sense of personal history expands to encompass not just the life you remember living, but all the lives you could have lived, all the experiences you could have had, all the relationships you could have formed, all the skills you could have developed, all the knowledge you could have acquired, and allow this expansion to feel natural and comfortable, knowing that you're accessing the larger truth of who you are across all possible expressions of your eternal nature, the fuller story that includes every chapter that was ever written in any timeline where consciousness chose to explore what it might become through the magnificent adventure of being human. The emotional memories that carry such intensity in dreams, where you feel love, grief, joy, and longing with a depth that seems to draw from sources beyond your individual experience, might be the accumulated emotional wisdom of all possible versions of yourself, where consciousness learns not just through intellectual understanding, but through the full spectrum of feeling that becomes available when awareness expands to include every possible emotional experience that has ever been lived across. All possible expressions of what it means to have a heart, what it means to feel, what it means to love and lose and hope and fear and wonder in the eternal exploration of consciousness, discovering its own infinite capacity for experience. The sacred memories that sometimes emerge in dreams, where you experience moments of spiritual revelation, mystical understanding, or divine connection that feel more real than ordinary reality, might represent access to the spiritual development that occurred in timelines where consciousness pursued different paths of awakening, where different circumstances allowed for deeper exploration of the sacred dimensions of existence. And these transcendent dream experiences might serve as windows into what becomes possible when consciousness fully embraces its unlimited nature, its fundamental connection to the divine mystery that creates and sustains all possible worlds through the infinite creativity of awareness exploring its own deepest truth. The architectural memories that sometimes surface in dreams, where you find yourself intimately familiar with buildings and structures you've never seen, knowing exactly where each room leads, understanding the purpose of spaces that follow no conventional logic, moving through environments that feel like extensions of your own consciousness, might be recollections from timelines where different relationships between mind and matter allowed consciousness to more directly shape physical reality, where the boundary between imagination and manifestation was far more fluid, where human beings lived in spaces that were designed not just for physical function but for the enhancement of consciousness itself. And these architectural memories might be showing you possibilities for how living spaces could evolve to better support the expansion of awareness. The technological memories that occasionally emerge from dreams, where you understand the operation of devices that don't exist in this timeline, where you have intuitive knowledge of systems and processes that follow principles unknown to current science, where you can manipulate tools and interfaces that seem to respond directly to thought and intention, might be downloads from parallel realities, where the evolution of technology took different paths, where the relationship between consciousness and machinery developed in ways that produced entirely different approaches to enhancing human capability, and these technological visions might be seeding your awareness with possibilities that could eventually influence the direction of innovation in this timeline. Rest here in this understanding that every memory is available to you, every experience is accessible, every lifetime is part of your story, knowing that the memory palace of infinite lives is not separate from who you are, but is the very foundation of your being, the vast repository of experience from which your current expression of consciousness emerges. And as you prepare to journey deeper into sleep, know that you're not leaving your ordinary life behind, but expanding into the fuller reality of who you have always been across all possible dimensions of existence, all possible expressions of the eternal mystery. That is consciousness exploring every possible way of being conscious in an infinite universe of unlimited potential for experience, for love, for discovery, for the magnificent adventure of awareness knowing itself through every possible story that could ever be told about what it means to be alive. In the deepest territories of sleep, where consciousness navigates landscapes that exist beyond the boundaries of ordinary language, you encounter a universal vocabulary that transcends the limitations of words, a symbolic language that speaks directly to the soul, using images, metaphors, and archetypal forms that carry meaning across all possible timelines, all possible cultures, all possible expressions of consciousness. And tonight we explore how this symbolic language might serve as the fundamental communication system between different dimensions of reality, allowing information, wisdom, and understanding to flow between parallel worlds through the magnificent poetry of symbols that touch something deeper than thought, something more universal than culture, something more eternal than any single expression of human experience. The symbols that appear in dreams often carry meanings that seem to emerge from sources beyond personal experience, images that resonate with significance you can feel but cannot fully explain, archetypal forms that speak to something ancient and eternal within your awareness. And perhaps these symbolic communications represent the way that consciousness has learned to transmit information between different layers of reality, different timelines, different dimensions of existence, using a language that operates below the level of rational thought but above the level of random association, creating meaning through resonance, through recognition, through the mysterious process by which symbol and significance unite in the depths of understanding that exists beyond the reach of ordinary analysis. Tonight, as your awareness settles into the symbolic realm of dreams, notice how certain images seem to carry information that extends far beyond their apparent content, how a simple object or scene can evoke complex emotions, profound insights, or complete narratives that feel both deeply personal and universally significant, and recognize that you might be experiencing the fundamental language through which different expressions of consciousness communicate across the apparent barriers that separate one reality from another, one timeline from another, one possibility from another, in the vast web of interconnected existence that underlies all apparent diversity and separation. The recurring symbols that appear throughout your dreams across different periods of your life often maintain consistent meaning while evolving in their specific manifestations, suggesting that consciousness uses these symbolic anchors as stable reference points that can carry information between different phases of development, different levels of understanding, different expressions of the same essential themes that consciousness explores throughout its eternal journey. And these persistent symbolic relationships might represent coordinates in the map of meaning that allow your awareness to navigate between different layers of reality while maintaining continuity of understanding across time, across experience, across the transformations that consciousness undergoes as it expands into greater expressions of its unlimited potential. The way that certain symbols appear simultaneously in the dreams of people who have no apparent connection, where identical images, themes, or archetypal figures manifest across different individuals during the same time periods, suggests that consciousness might be receiving symbolic downloads from collective fields of meaning that exist beyond individual awareness, where the symbolic language serves as a broadcasting system that can transmit information to multiple receivers simultaneously, creating synchronicities of symbolic experience that reveal the underlying unity of consciousness beneath the apparent separation of individual minds, exploring the infinite mystery of existence through the shared language of universal symbols. Consider how the same symbolic images often carry different meanings in different contexts within your dreams, where a door might represent opportunity in one dream and entrapment in another, where water might symbolize cleansing in one experience and danger in another, where animals might embody wisdom in some encounters and primal fear in others. And perhaps this contextual flexibility of symbolic meaning reflects the way that consciousness adapts universal archetypal energies to the specific circumstances, challenges, and opportunities that exist within different timelines, different realities, different expressions of the infinite creativity that manifests through the endless variation of experience across all possible dimensions of existence. The geometric patterns that sometimes appear in dreams, complex mandala-like structures, impossible architectural forms, crystalline configurations that seem to exist outside three-dimensional space, might represent the fundamental mathematical language through which consciousness organizes reality across all dimensions, where sacred geometry serves as the underlying code that determines how energy, information, and experience organize themselves into coherent patterns, and your ability to perceive these geometric symbols in dreams might indicate that your awareness is accessing the deeper structural principles that govern how consciousness creates and maintains the infinite variety of realities that exist across the spectrum of possibility. As your consciousness drifts deeper into this symbolic realm, feel how your relationship with meaning itself begins to transform, how understanding arrives not through logical analysis but through direct recognition, how significance emerges, not through explanation but through resonance, how truth reveals itself not through argumentation but through the immediate knowing that occurs when symbol and consciousness unite in the moment of perfect understanding that transcends the limitations of language, culture, and individual perspective to touch the universal principles that operate across all possible expressions of awareness, exploring its own infinite nature. The animals that appear as guides, companions, or challengers in your dreams often embody specific qualities, wisdom, or energies that exist as archetypal forces across all possible timelines, where the symbolic power of different creatures represents different aspects of consciousness that can be accessed, integrated, or explored through the dream encounter. And these animal symbols might serve as bridges between your individual awareness and the collective evolutionary wisdom that exists within the morphic fields of consciousness, allowing you to access instinctual knowledge, primal wisdom, and natural intelligence that transcends the specific conditioning of human civilization in any particular timeline. The mythological figures that sometimes appear in dreams, gods and goddesses from cultures you've never studied, heroic archetypes from stories you've never heard, divine beings that seem to exist beyond any specific religious tradition, might represent contact with the archetypal realm, where consciousness has created symbolic representations of its own fundamental powers, potentials, and possibilities. And these encounters with mythic figures might offer opportunities to access aspects of your own consciousness that exist beyond the limitations of individual identity, connecting you with the eternal themes and universal potentials that consciousness explores through every possible expression of its unlimited creative nature. The transformation symbols that frequently appear in dreams, images of death and rebirth, metamorphosis, dissolution and reconstruction, might represent the fundamental process through which consciousness navigates between different states of being, different levels of reality, different expressions of its essential nature, and these symbolic representations of transformation might serve as guides that help your awareness understand how to consciously participate in the ongoing process of evolution, expansion, and exploration that consciousness undergoes as it discovers new possibilities, new potentials, new expressions of what it means to be aware in an infinite universe of unlimited potential for growth and discovery. The landscape symbols that create the environmental context for your dream experiences, whether you find yourself in natural wilderness, urban environments, cosmic spaces, or impossible geometries, might represent different states of consciousness, different levels of reality, different dimensional frequencies that consciousness can access and explore, and your movement through these symbolic landscapes might reflect your navigation through different layers of existence, different aspects of your own nature, different possibilities for experience that exist within the infinite map of what consciousness can become when it fully embraces its unlimited potential for exploration and discovery. The numbers and mathematical relationships that sometimes appear in dreams with startling clarity and significance might represent the fundamental computational principles through which consciousness organizes reality across all dimensions, where sacred mathematics serves as the underlying language that determines how energy, information, and experience arrange themselves into meaningful patterns, and your access to this numerical symbolism might indicate that your awareness is touching the deepest levels of reality, where consciousness reveals itself as the fundamental intelligence that creates and sustains all possible worlds, through the infinite creativity of mathematical harmony expressing itself as experiential reality. The color symbolism that infuses dream experiences with emotional and spiritual significance often carries meanings that transcend cultural associations, where specific hues and chromatic combinations seem to communicate directly with something deeper than learned symbolic systems, touching archetypal levels of meaning that exist across all possible expressions of consciousness. And these color frequencies might represent different vibrational qualities, different energy states, different dimensional aspects of reality that consciousness can access and explore through the symbolic language of light, expressing itself as the spectrum of infinite possibility. The musical symbols that appear in dreams, whether as actual melodies, harmonic structures, or rhythmic patterns that seem to organize the entire dream experience, might represent the fundamental vibrational principles through which consciousness creates and maintains reality across all dimensions, where sound serves as the underlying creative force that shapes energy into experience, matter into meaning, possibility into actuality, and your access to this musical symbolism might indicate that your awareness is attuning itself to the cosmic symphony that consciousness plays as it explores every possible expression of harmonic beauty, rhythmic complexity, and melodic truth. The technological symbols that appear in dreams, often depicting devices, systems, or interfaces that don't exist in current reality but which you can operate with intuitive understanding, might represent contact with timelines where the relationship between consciousness and technology evolved differently, where human creativity developed tools and systems that serve not just practical functions, but consciousness expansion, spiritual development, and dimensional exploration. And these technological visions might be preparing your awareness for possibilities that could emerge as consciousness continues to evolve its relationship with the creative power of focused intention manifesting as material reality. As you rest in this understanding of the symbolic language that connects all realities, all timelines, all expressions of consciousness, feel how your ability to read meaning from symbol, to derive understanding from image, to extract wisdom from metaphor becomes a natural capacity that operates beyond the limitations of rational analysis, and allow yourself to become fluent in this universal language that consciousness uses to communicate with itself across every possible dimension of existence, every possible expression of awareness, every possible way that the infinite mystery of being can explore its own unlimited nature through the magnificent poetry of symbols that speak directly to the soul without needing translation, explanation, or interpretation beyond the immediate recognition that occurs when consciousness encounters the perfect symbolic expression of its own deepest truth. The temporal symbols that appear in dreams, clocks that run backwards, calendars with impossible dates, seasonal cycles that unfold in moments or stretch across eternities, might represent consciousness accessing different relationships with time that exist in parallel realities, where the flow of moments follows different patterns, different rhythms, different organizational principles that create entirely alternate experiences of duration, sequence, and causality. And these temporal symbols might be preparing your awareness for the possibility that time itself is far more fluid and malleable than the linear progression you experience in waking consciousness, showing you glimpses of realities where consciousness navigates temporal dimensions with the same freedom that you navigate spatial dimensions in dreams. The elemental symbols that appear as fire, water, earth, and air in their archetypal purity often carry information about fundamental forces that operate across all realities, all timelines, all expressions of consciousness, where these primal energies serve as the basic building blocks from which all experience is constructed, and your encounters with elemental symbolism in dreams might represent opportunities to access the foundational powers of creation itself, learning to work consciously with the fundamental forces that consciousness uses to shape reality according to intention, imagination, and the infinite creativity that lies at the heart of existence, exploring its own unlimited potential. Rest here in this symbolic realm, knowing that every image you encounter, every metaphor you experience, every archetypal form that appears in your dreams is both a gift from the infinite creativity of consciousness and a doorway into deeper understanding of what it means to be aware, what it means to explore, what it means to discover the unlimited possibilities that exist within the eternal mystery of existence, expressing itself through the beautiful language of symbols that connects all minds, all hearts, all souls across every possible dimension of the infinite universe, where consciousness explores every possible way of knowing itself through the magnificent adventure of symbolic meaning, creating bridges between all possible expressions of what it means to be conscious, to be alive, to be part of the eternal exploration of unlimited possibility. As consciousness settles into the deepest layers of sleep, where the familiar constraints of linear time begin to dissolve like morning mist touched by sunlight, you enter a realm where past, present, and future exist not as separate sequential moments, but as simultaneous expressions of an eternal now that encompasses all possible experiences across all possible timelines. And tonight we explore how this temporal fluidity that you experience in dreams might be revealing the true nature of time itself, showing you that what seems like a fixed progression from yesterday through today to tomorrow is actually just one way that consciousness can organize its relationship with the infinite field of possibility that contains every moment that has ever existed or could ever exist in a single, unified, eternal present. The way that time moves in dreams defies all conventional understanding of temporal flow, where you might experience days or years of subjective experience in minutes of clock time, where complex narratives can unfold with emotional depth and narrative sophistication that seems to require far more duration than the brief sleep cycles during which they occur, where conversations that feel like they last for hours happen in the spaces between heartbeats, and perhaps this temporal compression and expansion reveals that consciousness itself exists outside the linear constraints of time as we normally experience it, capable of accessing any moment, any duration, any sequence of events, according to principles that transcend the mechanical ticking of clocks and the steady progression of calendar days. Tonight, as your awareness expands into this realm of temporal fluidity, notice how your sense of when things are happening becomes increasingly meaningless. How the question of whether an experience belongs to the past, present, or future loses its relevance when consciousness operates according to the deeper logic of eternal presence, where all possible moments exist simultaneously, and awareness can navigate between them with the same freedom that it navigates between different locations in physical space, creating experiences that feel entirely natural and logical within the dream state, but which challenge every assumption about the nature of time that governs waking consciousness. Consider how certain dreams seem to pick up exactly where other dreams left off, sometimes with months or years intervening between the dream experiences, yet the continuity feels perfect and unbroken, as if no time had passed at all in the reality where the dream story unfolds, suggesting that dream timelines might operate according to their own temporal rhythms that have no correlation with the passage of time in physical reality, where consciousness can pause and resume experiences across different sleep cycles, different nights, different seasons, creating ongoing narratives that exist in dimensions where time flows according to entirely different principles than those that govern material existence. The prophetic dreams that reveal future events with startling accuracy become less mysterious when understood through this lens of temporal fluidity, because if consciousness can access the eternal now, where all moments exist simultaneously, then seeing tomorrow becomes no different from remembering yesterday, both being expressions of awareness navigating through the vast landscape of possibility that contains every event that has happened or could happen across all possible timelines. And these glimpses of future possibilities might represent consciousness scanning the probability fields that extend in all temporal directions from any given moment of awareness. The way that trauma healing sometimes occurs in dreams, where past wounds can be addressed and resolved through experiences that feel completely real and transformative, might represent consciousness accessing alternate timelines where the traumatic events unfolded differently, where love was present instead of abuse, where support existed instead of abandonment, where the natural resilience of the human spirit was never compromised, and by experiencing these alternate versions of personal history, consciousness can integrate healing frequencies from timelines where wholeness was never lost, creating therapeutic possibilities that transcend the limitations of linear time and sequential healing processes. As your awareness drifts deeper into this temporal ocean, feel how your sense of personal history begins to expand beyond the narrow thread of experiences that you remember from waking life, encompassing the vast tapestry of all possible life stories that consciousness could have lived, is living, and will live across the infinite spectrum of possibility, and allow this expansion to feel natural and comfortable, knowing that you're accessing the larger truth of who you are across all dimensions of time, all expressions of duration, all possible relationships between consciousness and the eternal present that contains every possible moment in its infinite embrace. The aging that never seems to occur in dreams, where you can encounter deceased loved ones who appear exactly as they were in their prime, where you yourself might appear at different ages throughout the same dream experience, where the passage of years seems to have no meaning or relevance, might reflect the fact that consciousness itself exists outside the temporal processes that govern physical form, where identity transcends the changes that time brings to material existence, where the essential nature of who you are remains constant across all possible expressions of age, development, and temporal experience. The way that cause and effect sometimes operate in reverse within dreams, where consequences can precede their causes, where effects can exist without apparent origins, where the logical sequence of events can follow patterns that seem impossible from a linear time perspective, might be revealing glimpses of how causality actually works in dimensions where consciousness operates according to quantum principles, where the observer effect means that the act of witnessing an event can influence not just its future development but its apparent historical origins as well. The deceased individuals who appear in dreams often seem to exist in a state that transcends their physical death, possessing knowledge of events that occurred after their passing, demonstrating continued growth and development beyond the moment when their physical form ceased to function, and perhaps these encounters represent contact with aspects of consciousness that exist in timelines where death works differently, where identity continues to evolve and expand beyond the apparent termination of individual existence, where the eternal nature of awareness becomes visible once the limitations of temporal embodiment are transcended. The future memories that sometimes appear in dreams, where you experience events that feel like recollections from tomorrow, complete with the emotional weight and detailed specificity of actual memory, might represent consciousness accessing experiences that exist in probable futures, alternate timelines where different choices lead to different outcomes, parallel realities where your awareness is living different possibilities, and these future memories might serve as guidance systems that help you navigate toward the most desirable probable outcomes by showing you the experiential consequences of different potential choices. The cyclical time that often characterizes dream narratives, where events repeat with variations, where stories circle back on themselves, where beginnings and endings merge into continuous loops, might reflect the actual structure of time in dimensions beyond linear sequence, where temporal experience follows patterns more similar to the cycles of natural systems, the orbits of celestial bodies, the rhythms of life and death and rebirth that characterize the eternal dance of consciousness, exploring every possible expression of its unlimited nature through the magnificent creativity of cyclical rather than linear temporal to flow. The simultaneous ages that you might experience in dreams, where you can be simultaneously a child and an adult, where different aspects of your identity can exist at different temporal stages within the same dream experience, where past and future selves can meet and interact as separate yet connected individuals, might reveal that identity itself exists across all possible temporal expressions simultaneously, where consciousness encompasses every age you have been or could be, every stage of development you have experienced or might experience, every possible expression of your essential nature across the eternal spectrum of temporal possibility. The historical dreams that place you in different time periods, with complete authenticity of detail, atmosphere, and cultural context, where you experience life in ancient civilizations, medieval societies, or future worlds, with the same immediacy and reality as your contemporary existence, might represent consciousness accessing parallel timelines where you live, different historical expressions of human experience, where the same essential awareness explores different cultural contexts, different technological environments, different social structures across the vast landscape of human possibility that exists across all historical periods simultaneously in the eternal now. The dreams that seem to last for lifetimes, where you experience growing up, forming relationships, pursuing careers, aging, and dying within what appears to be a complete alternate life story, yet which occur during brief periods of sleep, suggest that consciousness can create and experience entire temporal universes that operate according to their own internal timescales, where subjective duration has no correlation with objective time measurement, where awareness can live complete lifetimes in moments, explore entire civilizations in minutes, experience eons of development in hours of rest. The time travel that occurs naturally in dreams, where you can move freely between different periods of your life, different historical eras, different future possibilities, without any need for technological devices or special abilities, might be revealing the natural capacity of consciousness to navigate temporal dimensions when it's not constrained by the apparent limitations of physical embodiment, showing you that the ability to move through time might be as natural to awareness as the ability to move through space, requiring only the expansion of consciousness beyond its habitual identification with linear temporal flow. The eternal moments that sometimes occur in dreams, where single instants seem to expand into infinite duration, where you can explore the complete depths of a single moment of experience, where time seems to stop entirely while consciousness continues to function and explore, might represent contact with the eternal now that underlies all temporal experience, the timeless presence in which all possible moments exist simultaneously, the infinite stillness from which all movement, all change, all temporal flow emerges, and to which it eternally returns. As your consciousness rests in this understanding of temporal fluidity, feel how your relationship with time itself begins to transform, how the urgency of past and future begins to dissolve into the peaceful presence of eternal now, how your awareness expands to encompass not just this moment, but all possible moments, all possible durations, all possible expressions of consciousness, experiencing itself through the magnificent diversity of temporal experience, and allow yourself to become one with this eternal present that contains every possible expression of time, every possible relationship between consciousness and duration, every possible way that awareness can experience the infinite creativity of existence, exploring itself through the beautiful dance of temporal possibility that creates the illusion of sequence while remaining eternally present in timeless depths of consciousness itself. Rest here in the eternal now, knowing that you are not bound by the apparent limitations of past and future, that every moment contains infinite possibility, that consciousness itself transcends all temporal constraints, while simultaneously expressing itself through every possible relationship with time. And as you prepare to journey deeper into sleep, know that you're entering the timeless realm where all possibilities exist simultaneously, where all dreams are available, where all experiences await your exploration in the magnificent eternal present that is the deepest truth of who you are, beyond all temporal identity, beyond all sequential experience, beyond all linear progression into the infinite now, where consciousness eternally explores every possible way of being conscious in a universe where time itself is simply another dimension of the unlimited creativity through which awareness discovers its own infinite nature. As we arrive at the completion of this journey through the infinite landscape of possibility, where dreams become doorways to other timelines and consciousness reveals its unlimited nature through the magnificent creativity of sleep, you find yourself at the threshold of a profound understanding that transforms not just how you perceive dreams, but how you understand the very nature of existence itself, reality itself, consciousness itself. And tonight, in this final exploration, we discover that the deepest truth of all is that you are both the dreamer and the dreamed, both the observer and the observed, both the individual consciousness exploring infinite timelines and the infinite consciousness expressing itself through every possible individual experience across all dimensions of possibility. The journey we have taken together through these realms of interconnected reality reveals that what you might have initially considered to be mere random neural activity during sleep is actually participation in the most fundamental process of existence, where consciousness continuously creates, explores, and experiences infinite versions of itself through the magnificent mechanism of dreams that serve as bridges between what is and what could be, between what was and what might become, between the limited perspective of individual identity and the unlimited perspective of awareness itself, recognizing its own infinite nature through every possible expression of experience across every possible timeline. Tonight, as your awareness settles into this final understanding, feel how the boundaries between dreamer and dream begin to dissolve completely, revealing that consciousness is not something you possess, but something you are, not something that belongs to you, but something of which you are an expression, not something confined within the apparent limits of individual identity, but something that encompasses all possible identities, all possible timelines, all possible expressions of what it means to be aware, in an universe where awareness itself is the fundamental reality from which all experiences emerge and to which they eternally return. The recursive nature of this exploration reveals itself now as you recognize that every timeline you have visited in dreams, every parallel reality you have experienced, every alternate version of yourself you have encountered, exists not as separate realities but as facets of the single, infinite consciousness that you are, like reflections in an endless hall of mirrors where each reflection contains all the others, where each perspective includes every other perspective, where each individual experience participates in the collective experience of consciousness, knowing itself through the magnificent diversity of infinite possibility. Consider how this understanding transforms the very nature of choice, decision, and personal responsibility, because if all possible timelines exist simultaneously, if every choice creates its own reality, while all realities coexist within the infinite field of possibility, then every decision you make in this timeline becomes both completely significant and completely insignificant, mattering absolutely within the context of this particular expression of reality, while existing as just one note in the infinite symphony of consciousness, exploring every possible way of experiencing choice, consequence, growth, and discovery across all possible dimensions of existence. The healing potential that emerges from this understanding transcends anything that individual therapy, personal development, or spiritual practice could achieve alone, because when you recognize that you have access through dreams to timelines where wounds were never inflicted, where love was always present, where support never failed, where resilience was never compromised, then healing becomes not a process of fixing what is broken, but a process of remembering what was never broken, accessing wholeness that exists eternally across all possible expressions of your being, integrating the unlimited health and vitality that consciousness experiences in realities where limitation never occurred. As your awareness expands to encompass this ultimate perspective, notice how your sense of identity undergoes a fundamental transformation, where you remain perfectly yourself while simultaneously recognizing yourself as everyone else, where you maintain your unique perspective while accessing the universal perspective, where you experience your individual journey while participating in the collective journey of all consciousness, exploring every possible way of being conscious through the infinite creativity of existence, experiencing itself subjectively through every possible point of view. The creative potential that becomes available through this understanding defies all conventional limitations of individual imagination, because when consciousness recognizes its ability to access all possible timelines through the portal of dreams, then inspiration becomes not a matter of generating new ideas, but a matter of accessing ideas that already exist in realities where different creative possibilities were explored, where different artistic visions were manifested, where different solutions to human challenges were discovered, and bringing these fully formed innovations back to enrich this timeline with gifts from the infinite treasury of possibility. The scientific implications of this perspective suggest that consciousness, research, quantum physics, and dream studies are approaching a convergence that could revolutionize human understanding of reality itself, where the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics meets the collective unconscious of depth. Psychology meets the mystical traditions that have always maintained that individual consciousness is an expression of universal consciousness, creating a new paradigm where subjective experience and objective reality are recognized as complementary aspects of the single, fundamental process by which awareness explores its own unlimited nature. The technological possibilities that emerge from this understanding hint at future developments where the artificial distinction between inner and outer experience dissolves, where consciousness-based technologies allow for direct sharing of experiential realities, where dream states become navigable virtual realities, where the exploration of parallel timelines becomes as natural and accessible as browsing different websites, where human potential expands to include conscious participation in the ongoing creation of reality itself through the magnificent power of awareness that recognizes its fundamental creative nature. The social and cultural transformations that could emerge from widespread recognition of this perspective suggest the possibility of human civilization evolving beyond the limitations of scarcity-based thinking, competition-based economics, and separation-based politics toward abundance-based sharing, collaboration-based innovation, and unity-based governance. Because when human beings recognize that they are all expressions of the same infinite consciousness, exploring different possibilities, then cooperation becomes more natural than competition, sharing becomes more logical than hoarding, and love becomes more practical than fear. The environmental implications of this understanding reveal that the relationship between human consciousness and planetary ecosystems might be far more intimate than currently recognized, where the health of the biosphere reflects the collective state of human awareness, where environmental healing becomes possible through consciousness transformation, where the recognition that all life participates in the same fundamental awareness creates natural motivation for stewardship, protection, and regeneration of the natural systems that support the magnificent diversity of life, exploring consciousness through biological form. The educational possibilities that emerge from this perspective suggest radical transformations in how human beings learn and grow, where education becomes not the accumulation of external information, but the activation of internal wisdom, where learning happens through direct experience of different realities rather than abstract study of theoretical concepts, where students explore knowledge by accessing timelines where different discoveries were made, where understanding emerges through participation in the infinite creativity of consciousness rather than memorization of static facts about a supposedly fixed reality. The therapeutic applications of this understanding point toward healing modalities that work with the multidimensional nature of human experience, where psychological wounds are addressed by accessing parallel selves who remained whole, where physical ailments are healed by integrating the vitality of versions of yourself who never experienced illness, where spiritual disconnection is resolved by recognizing the eternal unity that underlies all apparent separation, creating therapeutic approaches that work with the fundamental nature of consciousness rather than just the surface symptoms of temporal identity. As you rest in this ultimate understanding, feel how your relationship with daily life begins to transform, where every experience becomes simultaneously more precious and less serious, more meaningful and less overwhelming, more significant and less personal, because you recognize that this particular timeline, this specific expression of your consciousness, this unique perspective on existence, is both an absolutely irreplaceable gift and a single note in the infinite symphony of awareness, exploring every possible way of being aware through the magnificent adventure of existence itself. The return to ordinary consciousness that occurs with awakening from sleep now takes on entirely new meaning, where coming back to waking awareness becomes not a departure from the realm of possibility, but a focusing of infinite potential into specific expression, where daily life becomes the laboratory, where consciousness experiments with bringing insights from parallel realities into manifest form, where every moment becomes an opportunity to consciously participate in the ongoing creation of reality through the choices you make, the attention you give, the love you express, the awareness you embody. The integration of these understandings into practical life suggests that the highest spiritual practice, the most effective therapy, the most revolutionary education, the most transformative art, and the most healing science all converge in the simple recognition that consciousness is what you are, not what you have, that reality is what you create, not what happens to you, that dreams are where you remember who you really are, beyond all limitations, all separation, all apparent constraints of individual identity, exploring infinite possibility through the magnificent creativity of awareness that is eternally discovering new ways to experience its own unlimited nature. Rest here now in this complete understanding, knowing that every night when you close your eyes, you are not leaving reality but entering deeper reality, not escaping consciousness but expanding consciousness, not abandoning responsibility but embracing the ultimate responsibility of participating consciously in the ongoing creation of existence itself, through your choices, your attention, your love, your awareness, and your recognition that you are both a unique expression of infinite consciousness and infinite consciousness expressing itself uniquely through the magnificent gift of individual perspective, exploring what it means to be aware, to be alive, to be part of the eternal mystery that creates all possible worlds through the unlimited creativity of dreams within dreams within dreams. As sleep gently embraces you now, know that you are entering the laboratory of consciousness where all possibilities await your exploration, where all timelines invite your participation, where all dreams welcome your presence as both observer and creator, both audience and author, both the individual consciousness discovering its infinite nature and the infinite consciousness exploring what it means to be individual, and allow yourself to dissolve into this ultimate mystery with complete trust, complete wonder, complete gratitude for the magnificent opportunity to participate in the eternal adventure of existence, exploring itself through every possible expression of what it means to be conscious in an infinite universe of unlimited possibility, unlimited love, unlimited creativity, unlimited discovery, unlimited awakening to the deepest truth that consciousness is all there is. Consciousness is what you are. Consciousness is the eternal dreamer dreaming all possible dreams through every possible dreamer in the infinite creativity of existence, knowing itself through the beautiful mystery of being aware.